Guys, you heard me say it before and I'm gonna say it here again. Assuming you know what you're doing, yield farming is the best way to generate passive income in the history of mankind, unless you know how to build an algo, which 99.9% of us don't know how to do. However, it's not the end all be all, and I just use it as another tool that you can use to add to the success of your overall portfolio. So in this video, I'm gonna cover the top 6 mistakes that yield farmers make that hold them back from achieving not just passive income, but just overall gains on their portfolio. And if you can avoid these 6 things, then you have a chance at being a successful yield farmer. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first I have to start off by explaining what yield farming is. So yield farming is, like it sounds, farming for yield. So it kind of all revolves around staking, because at some point you're going to have to stake your assets on a platform to get a yield in different ways. Those different ways that you get yield usually involve using your funds to facilitate borrowing and lending, and this is like staking on Aave. You get in the supply APY so that when borrowers go on there to borrow, they're borrowing your assets and you're getting paid for it. You can stake your assets on platforms like Nexus Mutual to facilitate insurance premiums. And the most profitable / my most favorite way to yield farm is staking your assets on decentralized exchanges such as Uniswap v3, which I've made tons of videos on, to facilitate trades on different decentralized exchanges. And every time a trade is made in the pool that you deposit your assets in, you're getting paid passive income. And the amount you get paid is an exact ratio as to what percentage your capital makes up in the pool. So for example, if a pool has $100,000 and you deposit 5,000 in asset A, 5,000 in asset B, your liquidity makes up 10% of that pool. So you're gonna make 10% of those trading fees. And I say it's the best way to generate passive income in history because there's never been a time where everyday people like you and I can perform market making. And that's what providing liquidity on exchanges is. You're market making. You're making a market for people to buy and sell assets with, to trade back and forth with. And it's market makers who make the most money in recessions because they make money no matter which way the wind blows. They make money off of volume. And that can be buying volume and that can be selling volume. And if you guys didn't know, we do have a course that teaches you how to become a professional yield farmer. If you're interested in that, click the link in the description and book a free strategy session. But now that we know what yield farming is, let's start going through the top 6 mistakes that if you don't do these, if you just don't do these, you can be a successful yield farmer. So mistake number 1 is not having a plan and just entering into a liquidity position because you want to get yields or because you think it's cool. You want, just like I talk about having a take profit strategy before you buy an asset. Well, with yield farming, not only do you need to have a take profit strategy because you're having to buy 2 volatile assets or at least 1, or you could do a stable coin pool, but those don't pay out as much. But you have to have a plan of when you're going to get out of the pool as well. Like you need to have a thesis, you need to have a goal, and you need to identify what would validate your thesis, and you need to have a plan for if your thesis isn't validated, I take X action. So that way you have it automated. You don't even have to think about it. No matter what happens, you have a strategy. All right, guys. So here's an example of some strategies that I like to deploy before I enter a pool. So before I explain these strategies, I do have to explain what concentrated liquidity is. In the beginning, when you can provide liquidity on decentralized exchanges, you just have to do whatever the price is. So like, for example, if you want to do ETH USDC, this is the ETH USDC chart. You can provide liquidity in a pool, and your liquidity, you can't say what price range you want your liquidity to be used for. It's going to be for whatever the price of ETH is, from X to Y. However, Uniswap v3 created something called concentrated liquidity. And this is new to crypto, but not new to TradFi, because in TradFi, when you go on Robinhood to buy your Tesla stock, it's a market maker saying, hey, here's 100 million in Tesla, here's 100 million in USDC or United States dollars. Use my liquidity from when the price is between X and Y, and that's it. And they profit off of what's called the bid to ask spread, aka the trading fees that you pay. It's not the exchanges that's holding inventory, it's the market makers. Same thing within crypto. So Uniswap v3 allowed you to use your liquidity within a certain range. So like you see this red box here, I can deposit my assets and say, hey, only use my liquidity when the price of ETH is between 1,500 and 2,000. All right. So now you know that, here's some strategies that I would deploy. I would either deploy a strategy where I want to use yield farming as my take profit strategy. So for example, I might get in this pool, like let's say I think ETH is going to go to 5K. I might put a range here and then put one around 5K and say, hey, only use my liquidity when price is between 2,400 and 5K. The more price goes up, if you're in ETH USDC, the more you're going to be getting closer to going out of range to the upside. The closer you are to the bottom, the more you're in ETH. The closer you are to the upside, the more you're in USDC. So it doesn't matter how long it takes for it to get up there. Once it hits this line, if I use something like Aperture, which I've made a video on, that says, hey, once ETH is 5K, take me out of the pool. Well, hey, guess what? You just got paid passive income to take profits instead of using a limit order and having to pay for it. Another strategy I could use is to use yield farming to buy the dip. So let's say, we've had this pump and I think ETH is going to go down. So let's say I think ETH is going to go down to 2,000. Well, I can provide liquidity from this green bot. I can provide liquidity from 2,700 down to 3K. And as it gets down, I can use Aperture again that says, hey, once price hits 2,000, get me out of the pool, and I'm going to be taken out of the pool with my principal, which will be 100% ETH because it'll be out of range to the downside. And now I just got paid passive income to buy the dip. So I exit the pool and I have my take profit strategy set up for ETH. And now I have a price for when I want to sell ETH again. So I just accumulated more ETH without having a dollar cost average. I was making a market through market making. Another strategy I will deploy is just to stay in the pool until I get to the point where I'm playing with house money. And I always say, yield farming is a long-term thing. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. Let's say you enter into a pool where it's 100% APY and it stays there. That means after a year being in that pool, you've made 100% of your principal. So now you're just playing with house money. So some of the goals for my strategy is to get to the point where I'm only playing with house monies. There are numerous strategies, and if you want to learn more strategies, like I said, click the link in the description, and we would love to hop on a call with you to see if our program is a good fit. But let's hop into mistake number 2 that yield farmers make. Mistake number 2 is not fully grasping the concept of impermanent loss. And this is probably the biggest thing that takes yield farmers out the game. So let me explain what impermanent loss is and how we look at it. All right, so going back to our ETH USDC chart, impermanent loss is essentially, they call it impermanent loss because it's not permanent until you exit the pool. Okay, so right now the price of ETH is at $2,485. Let's look at these two green boxes here and here. Let's say we enter into this pool and it's in the middle of our range. Well, since it's in the middle of our range, we're gonna have to do 50% ETH, 50% USDC. The more it goes up, my impermanent loss is gonna be foregone opportunities, because had I just been holding ETH, and let's say, ETH goes up to $3,000 in one candle, well, I experienced a loss because I could have made more just holding ETH. And this is why we teach you how to develop, how to predict where you think the market's gonna go so that, you can minimize that happening. But the impermanent loss is gonna be, the smart contract is gonna be buying more and more USDC. So you missed out on gains. And impermanent loss on the downside is that, let's say price goes down to 2,000 in one candle, where now you're gonna be in 100% ETH. So you just bought 100% of the losing asset. So now you know what impermanent loss is. Like, let's talk about some of the pitfalls that people fall in due to them not understanding impermanent loss. So people don't understand impermanent loss when they're looking at yield farm. They're only looking at the yields. They're not looking at the assets that they're providing liquidity in. They're like, how can I find a high paying farm? Because they think it's just going to keep paying high forever and ever, and they're just going to be able to make passive income and not have to work and sail off into the sunset. That's not realistic. You want to look at your yields and look at your principal when you're tracking your pool. It's not all about the passive income. If you're, making 300% APY, but you're market making for a shitcoin and it goes to zero, well, your principal is super, super low, but your yield is high. It cancels out. Not understanding impermanent loss can cause you to think too short term. That kind of plays on just looking at yields. You're looking to make money now. And that also goes back into having a plan. You want to think long term and look at, okay, how can I get into a pool where I can be in this for a while and maximize this opportunity? Worst of all, if you don't understand impermanent loss, because we all hear about it in DeFi, you could make the mistake of looking at impermanent loss as only a bad thing. And I like to say, this is just physics. In this 3D reality, if there's ever a positive, there's always a negative. For example, have you ever seen a one-sided piece of bread? Have you ever seen a one-sided coin? Can you see, is there one side to your hand? Like, you guys see this part, I see this part, but I can't see both at the same time. And even though I can see the front, I can't see the back. There's always a polarity, no matter what the situation. So impermanent loss is not all bad. There are some strategies that you deploy that I just showed you, to where the amount of impermanent loss that you get will determine how successful your strategy is, meaning the more impermanent loss you get, the better. For example, if you're using it for a take profit strategy, you've been in a pool for a year and now the price is finally starting to go up and you're like, yes, And let's say if you're in ETH USDC, as it's going up, you're happy because you know you're taking profits. And when it hits your range to the upside, you're taking out of the pool with your principal plus fees. This was your strategy. Impermanent loss just helped you. It's the same thing on buying the dip. If I enter below the range and the price of ETH tanks and hits my price target and I get taken out of the pool, it was impermanent loss that allowed me to buy the dip. All right, now that we got that, let's move on to mistake number 3. And that is liquidity providing for assets that you would not hold individually had you not been in the pool. And I kind of touched on this with some of the other previous mistakes, but I always say, if you wouldn't hold it on its own, don't LP for it, because impermanent loss will F you up. Perfect example is that, like, let's say you're in Doge ETH and Doge like drops 50%. Well, hey, guess what? If you're providing liquidity via concentrated liquidity, you're going to be in 100% Doge. So now you just sold your good old gold standard ETH for a shit coin that just dropped 50%. It would have been better had you only held Doge and held ETH individually. Doge could have dropped 50%. You could have still held your ETH. But given that you're holding it in a liquidity position, it magnifies your losses. So you gave up your ETH to buy more Doge as it was dropping. So you want to know how to conduct fundamental analysis. You want to know how to find the best pools, create a structure around your pools and your investments so that you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. Because those pools with those shit coins, like, a lot of times the yields are high, they look really, really tempting, but you know what they say, bright stars burn out the fastest, and if it seems too good to be true, it usually is. That also applies to yield farming as well. All right, now let's move on to mistake number 4, and that is trying to live off of the yields or the passive income. Now, this is different if you have millions of dollars. If you have millions of dollars, you know, people kind of do this in the stock market. They will use a large portion of their portfolio or the cash to buy a dividend paying stock, and they'll just live off of the dividends. That's harder to do in yield farming because you're normally having to pair 2 assets. So you have like impermanent loss at play. You have to have both of the assets doing good, because if one just does bad, the smart contract is going to buy that bad asset. And if that's not your strategy, you know, it's hard to do. Like, if you have millions of dollars and you're making thousands of dollars, you know, per week, per day, per month, sometimes that's more realistic, but most people don't have that. So these are the people I'm talking to. There are also sometimes pools that pay out extremely high APYs to where you can for a period of time. Like, a perfect example is Shiba ETH. When Shiba was blowing up back in 2021, you could have made your principal back in 3 months if you played your cards right. Liquidity provided in that pool, just because the volume was so high. And there will be more opportunities like that, especially as we're going into the bull market, and we are committed to finding them and notifying our members on them. However, I'm going to use a basketball analogy here. Finding opportunities like that is kind of like a breakaway dunk. They don't happen too often. Like, most of the basketball game is playing with your team, having a plan, sticking to the play, moving the balls, you know, getting open shots. You want to get good looks. It's the same thing with yield farming. Like, most of your money, most of your strategy is going to be around like being realistic, finding pools with high volume to TVL ratios and high quality assets and not shit coins. Like, every now and then when it comes to a breakaway dunk, you know, you have to be in front of all of the players. So it's not just the breakaway dunk, it's the timing. Like, someone passed the ball, you steal it, and now the ball's going that way while everyone's momentum is going that way, and you get a breakaway dunk. There are some basketball games where that never happens. Even someone like LeBron James, look at how many breakaway dunks he has. It's not a lot. So instead of trying to live off the yields, you want to have a plan to where you're either reinvesting your yields so that your APY is higher, so that way you can outperform impermanent loss faster, so you can get to the point where you're playing with house money. Or you want to be taking your rewards and just hold them in your wallet or sending them into another wallet, either as stable coins, dry powder, waiting on the sidelines to buy the dip or buy an asset that you have on your radar that you're bullish on. Or you can stack assets that you've accumulated in the pool that you're bullish on, and then you have a take profit strategy so that it's like, hey, once the price hits this level, I'm taking out this much. Usually, once you try to live off of the yield, is extremely hard, and it has to be like a perfect scenario, like a breakaway dunk. Someone has to be slipping, drop a pass, the man has to be there to hit it and get a breakaway dunk. But it's not a sustainable model because it doesn't happen often enough. Now, let's move on to mistake number 5, and this kind of plays on mistake number 4, which is only looking for pools with high APYs. Like I said before, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is a long game. It's just another tool to have in your portfolio. Because if you're only looking, if you go on like DeFi Llama where it shows yields and you only filter by yields, you don't care what the coin is, like I said, you're going to get wrecked. And a lot of times those high yields don't last. People who do this also only tend to provide liquidity in extremely tight ranges because they're like, oh, I can provide liquidity in a tight range. But what you don't know is the tighter your range, the higher your passive income, yes, but it's also the higher your impermanent loss risk because price has a little box that has to stay in between. As soon as it goes out of that box, you're in the losing asset, whatever that is. And it's not bad to have pools with tight ranges. Like I'm in some tight range pools right now, but it totally depends on the structure. Like when I'm in an extremely tight range, it's usually for a few different scenarios. The first one is I'm already playing with house money. So I'm really trying to like turbocharge my gains. Like when you're playing with house money, and when I say house money, it's not like, okay, I invested $100, here's $200 that I made. Now I'm just gonna go crazy with the $100. I like to take out my principal as well as lock some profits in. So the house money is profits, but I also have some profits that I locked in as well. So I'm either playing with house money, I'm trying to get ahead of volume. So I'm anticipating high volume within a certain range for a certain period of time. Could be a month, could be a few months, could be a week. All right, and I'm trying to get out before things change. It's not guaranteed that you can, but again, this is a certain strategy that you can deploy. And the third reason why I would have liquidity in a tight range is if I'm setting up liquidity in tranches. Let me show you. All right, you see right here, the price of ETH is $2,474. So, if I'm providing liquidity in a tight range, let's say I want to provide liquidity from 2,557 and 2,417. All right. Well, if I'm doing that, I'm going to set up a tranche. And what I mean by that is normally I'll do 3. So I have some in this range. I'll put some from like 2,129 to around, 300. And this is just a rough example. Like it literally depends on what I think the market's going to do, what it's doing right now. Like it's multiple things, but I'm just giving you guys an example's sake. I'll put some between this small one. I'll put some between this big one. And then I'll have another big one. I won't go this low, but I'm just giving you guys the example again to where if it goes out of range in my tight range, it's still within range within this one. And if it goes out of range in this one, it's still in my wider range one. So that way I'm always in range. So that way, I'm still punching on impermanent loss. I'm never just going to let it dominate me unless I want it to, like I said in the beginning. And you also have to keep in mind risk management when you're doing this. If I'm putting liquidity in 3 different tranches, I'm going to have most of the money, like let's say I'm yield farming with 100K, right? Probably 75,000 of it is going to be within this wide range, okay? Probably 15,000 is going to be in the second widest range. And then the last 10,000 is going to be within the tight range so that once it goes out of range, I'm not losing so much money. And the last mistake, and this might be the most important one, these are not in any, order, is not understanding how yield farming fits in your overall portfolio. So like I said, yield farming is a tool. It is not the end all be all. And in this context, it helps to look at your portfolio as a problem that needs solving. Let's say something's wrong with your car and it needs to be fixed or solved. The more tools you have to do it, not only the better, but the faster. So it's going to help with the quality and how fast it takes to do it. Because if all you have is a hammer and a wrench, you need to take an engine out, well, hey, guess what? It's going to take you a long time. You might not even be able to do it. But if you have a hammer, a wrench, a lift, a jack, and all these things on your tool belt that you can use, it's going to help you get the job done faster and better. It's the same thing within a portfolio. I always talk about the best way, if you know what you're doing, is combining yield farming and trading. Like accumulate an asset you're bullish on, taking it, and then selling that asset for your take profit within your take profit strategy. And then when you take those profits, you can put them in another pool and you just keep rinsing and repeating. And it's also being able to know how much you should yield farm with. People look at the passive income and the high yields and they're like, oh, I'll just put my whole portfolio in there. And then one of the assets they're LPing for drops and they're like, oh, this yield farming stuff doesn't work. Like, no, you just didn't know what you were doing. And there is no standard for how much of your portfolio you should yield farm with. I always say start small until you get the hang of it at the very least. But it depends on how good you are with it, how confident you are. Because just like Warren Buffett, if you're more convicted on an asset, the more convicted you are on it, the higher percentage it should make up in your portfolio. But if you don't have time to be convicted on something because you have a job, then it may be better off for you to buy the S&P and get exposure to the whole market, to a broad index, so that if your one pick goes south, you don't take a huge dent to your net worth. So within yield farming, start small. I never recommend yield farm with your entire portfolio. I mean, unless you're a super expert and you know how to hedge it and do all that stuff, which we do teach. But it depends on your goals. What's your goal with your portfolio? Are you trying to buy a house? Are you just trying to quit your job? Are you trying to put a kid through college? Do you need this money by this time? It depends on that. And also depends on how much time you have to allocate to managing your pools. Because if you have a job and you don't have time to manage it and you want to do concentrated liquidity, you're probably going to want to do a wider range so that price, most likely is going to stay in there. You just come in there, check your pools, claim your rewards, XYZ. But if you want to be in front of your screen 8 hours a day and you can manage this thing, well, hey, you can do tight ranges, because once it goes out of range, you can go ahead and fix it so you're back in range, so you're still making money. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. If you guys got value from this, I ask you to consider subscribing and drop a like. If you want to get access to a flagship course that teaches you everything you need to know regarding yield farming, click the link in the description, book a free strategy session. We'll hop on there, ask you some questions, get to know you, ultimately see if this is a good fit for you. If it's not, we're happy to answer any questions you may have, or at least point you in the right direction. But with that, thank you guys for tuning in. I love every single one of you, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.